You know that moment when you take a bite of cheesecake and it's either too dense, too watery, bland, or just tastes artificial? Well, there's one ingredient that fixes all of that, and it's literally grazing in my backyard right now. And maybe yours too. Stick around because I'm going to show you why sheep's milk creates the creamiest, most flavorful cheesecake you've ever tasted. It just might ruin store-bought cheesecake forever. Hello shepherds, welcome back. And if you're new here, hello. This is where we talk all things sheepy. And today, I'm about to show you how to make the most decadent chocolate cheesecake using sheep milk cheese that I made from scratch. And it's going to completely change how you think about dessert. To start, let's chat while I grab some milk from the girls. This cheesecake is a family favorite. We have a lot of chocolate lovers in our household, so when I want to treat them, this is something I like to whip up. It features an Oreo cookie crust, our signature favorite sheep's milk filling, chocolified, then topped with the dark chocolate ganache and some whipped chocolate sheep's cream and some fresh berries from the garden for a garnish. So many years ago, I was that person who bought cheesecake from a grocery store. So you see, I grew up in a strictly no cooking type of household. I'm talking my parents would scold me when I would secretly bake a cake, and at first my cakes came out terrible. And my family would laugh and laugh about it. But I had an aunt who loved to bake, and she made the best cheesecakes. But then one year her baking changed. Her cakes got worse. And I mainly remember the flavor just wasn't there anymore, and everything was different. I was too scared to ask her, but after a couple years as I grew up, I asked her about her recipe, and she laughed, and it turns out when her baking went downhill, that's when she stopped baking and would just buy cheesecake or pies from the store and then pass it off as her own. I begged her to make her desserts again, but no amount of begging and pleading would change her mind. So I decided to try and tackle cheesecakes, using mostly store-bought ingredients at first, since this was before I had any livestock, and then later with our own homemade cheeses. And let me tell you, it's so much fun to make something that not only is local as your backyard, but also I like to joke how the sheep earn their keep by calculating out how much the dessert is worth and mentally deduct that cost as if it counts as a sale. It's factually incorrect, but emotionally it's so real. So I'm going to take this milk back home, strain it, and chill it. So it's the next morning, and the story of great cheesecake actually starts here, with making the cheese itself. I have a more in-depth video on making soft cheeses. I'll link in the description and above too. I need to make some more soft cheese, so I'm going to go ahead and make this batch started. I'm using a simple soft cheese method today with just 3 ingredients: milk, rennet, and thyme. The higher fat content in cheese milk gives our cheese that wonderful curd. And if you ever worked with store-bought milk versus fresh from your backyard milk, the curd is so much firmer. And though dairy work is a hard work, if you love making cheeses or love dairy as much as I, you just might find out it's pretty rewarding. So now that our cheese is ready set, I'm going to put our cheese pot aside. Normally I put it in the oven, but we'll need that for later. So I'm going to put the pot in there later to set overnight. Any nice room temperature spot works really well though. We just don't have that much counter space here, so there's a lot of shuffling around that happens in the kitchen. Meanwhile, I'm going to grab some cream for our ganache and for whipping. I'll have the recipe down below as well. So this recipe is pretty lenient. I like to dedicate most of my cream to making butter. I'm going to reserve this cream for making the garnishes for the cake today. And we go through so much butter here. So instead of making our cheesecake with sour cream cheese, we're going to use soft cheese. Now, when it comes to substitutions, I love using soft cheeses because there's so much we can do with the flavor. Do we want it more tangy or buttery, perhaps, or by adjusting our cultures or aging techniques, we can really change the flavor of our cheeses to not only something that reflects our land, our animals, but kind of ourselves too. And so, if you want to use homemade cream cheese, you can, but if you want to use ricotta, chev, or a general soft cheese, any of the soft cheeses galore, those work really well in this recipe too. So for the rest of our cheesecake, let's start with our crust and preheat our oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit or 190 degrees Celsius. Let's lightly grease our pan, being careful to get all the nooks and crannies. And to make our crust, we're going to need to mash these cookies. A food processor works really well here, but I usually just smush the cookies in the bag it comes with, or with my Moro pestle, and a rolling pin works really well. But often there are these large bits that get missed. So I like to go back over with my pestle and further crush these little bits, so they're no longer bigger than, say, your pinky nail. If you want to save some crumbs, we can use it as a garnish later too. So once our cookie crumbs are pretty well mashed, we can start melting our butter. I'm using about 100 grams of our sheep's milk butter. That's about 6 tablespoons. I'm melting a little bit at a time. I make butter about once a week from that week's cream. So this butter represents about a week's worth of work. So in our medium-sized bowl, we add our Oreo cookie crumbs, our melted butter, and sugar. These cookies are already pretty sweet, so I'm not going to add sugar. But if I was using chocolate graham cracker crumbs, I just might. Sometimes they're sweet enough as it is. So let's go ahead and stir this up until the mixture is evenly crumbly and looks kind of like a wet sand at the beach. Press these moistened crumbs into the bottom and partway up the sides of the prepared pan. It helps to make sure it's as even as possible, but I like to make it a little thick in the corners here, rather than try to keep everything super even. This is so that it's easier to pull out of the pan later. It's a bit of balance though. Thick enough to hold our cake up without falling apart when we take it out of the pan, but not so thick it becomes a super hard crust that our fork has trouble getting through. If you can see your pan through the crumbs, it's too thin. I need to add some more crumbs, so let's crush some more cookies. I really like my Moro pestle, but just popping any large cookie bits there that I missed. Okay, so now that it's all set, we're going to place our pan on a baking sheet to catch any potential drips and bake the crust for about 15 minutes. Since it can be hard to see the crust change color, I find it helps to just be mindful of the aromas. As soon as you can smell a strong chocolate aroma, remove it from the oven. It's done. Okay, so almost 15 minutes have passed and that chocolate aroma has filled the air. Time to pull it out and set aside to cool a little as we make our filling. Also, don't forget to turn the heat down on our oven to 350 or 176. Now for making the filling. In a small saucepan, heat up our milk of choice. I'm using our sheep's milk. It's a combination of Shetland sheep and our East Frisian Cross ewe. And then next, let's add in our chocolate chips. We want to stir frequently to keep our chips from sticking to the bottom of the pan and burning the chips. The chips melt pretty fast once the milk warms up though. If you want to use a microwave to melt the chocolate, that should work too. Just melt in little bursts and stirring often. We want to keep on stirring our chips until they're well dissolved and blended in. The mixture will be pretty smooth, and once our chips are melted, we'll need to remove our pan from the heat and stir in our espresso powder, and then set our pan to the side to cool some. Then we can get started on the rest of our filling. In another bowl, we'll need our prepared soft cheese of choice. I'm using sheep-based soft cheese made in the chef style. Years ago, I used to make this with my Nubian goats and sheep's milk, prior to when my goats were young, but nowadays I mostly just focus on sheep's milk. So beat together our soft cheese and sugar at low speed until well combined, scraping the bottom and sides of the bowl to make sure we got all of it mixed in well. And then beat again for just a little bit of time until our cheese mix looks pretty smooth. Next, we want to add our eggs in one at a time, beating to combine after each one. I'm using our farm eggs, which are several breeds from light to heavy. Some are older and don't lay as well, but we love them nonetheless. So we stir in the vanilla and then add the flour. So all these different sizes in farm raised, it's not standardized. There's so much variation in the size of eggs, even cream in the milk. So using weights really helps. Okay, so let's add our chocolate milk mixture. I'm using dark chocolate here because it's my family's favorite for baked treats, but really any of your favorite chocolate types that you find in your baking aisle should work. I'm beating the batter slowly until thoroughly combined. Another thing that helps is working with recipes that don't care if your ingredients vary. Next, let's scrape the bottom and sides of the bowl and mix some more, just until smooth. It's a dark batter, and I hope you can see this. It really looks more like pudding at this stage. Now let's pour our batter on top of our cooled crust in the pan. I like to place the pan on the baking sheet, and this just makes it easier to get in and out of our oven safely. Plus it contains any of the spills or splatters should anything terrible happen. So let's pop this into our oven and bake our cake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 176 Celsius for about 45 to 50 minutes, or until a toothpick or a skewer or anything inserted into the cake about 1 inch from the outside edge comes clean. I'm not testing in the center for this one because it should still be a little soft in the center. If you have a digital thermometer, insert just a little bit from the edge should read about 175 degrees Fahrenheit or 79 degrees Celsius. Each time I test it, it will leave a mark, but that's okay. The garnishes will just cover that up. The center may not look fully set, and that's okay too. Let's check that chickle. Okay, so if you ever made a custard style pie, this is sort of similar. We want a softer set in the center and cooked more thoroughly on the edges. This gives us that wonderful texture that we're looking for once it's ready. Okay, so now that our cake is ready, let's turn off our oven and crack the door open a few inches. And then let's let the cake cool in the oven for about 1 hour. I need to go pick up a child and it should be ready by the time I get back. Okay, so I'm back and let's pull it out of the oven and cool on the rack. I'm using this cold burner. When it's completely cool, cover the cake and put it in the fridge until you're ready to serve. Or for an extra pop, let's garnish it. We have some cookie crumbs from earlier that we reserved, but also we can top it with a dark chocolate ganache, some chocolate whipped cream, or other tasty treats. So let's get into the garnishes. Just like how we made the chocolate mix earlier, we want to heat up our cream and chocolate, stirring often to make sure our chocolate chips are moving around, and once this mix is super smooth, let's take it off the heat. I'm going to cool it a little, and this is to firm it up. As it cools, it will harden some, and then let's drizzle it on top of our cake. I'm going to smooth it out with a spoon, and look at that crack is gone. It looks pretty enough like this already, but let's add some of our reserved cookie crumbs on the edge of the cake. I'm going to whip up our dark chocolate whipping cream. I was thinking about using the Oreo filling to sweeten the icing, so let's grab our cream. I have some extra cream just in case the Oreo filling doesn't work out. Usually I just whip up about 1 cup of cream with a few spoonfuls of powdered sugar, a dash of vanilla, and it's really good. I want to make this double dark chocolate whipped cream, so let's get into it. For the chocolate whipped cream, it's basically like making butter but stopping short. Once the cream is in the soft peak stage, I'm adding in our Oreo filling bits to taste, and then add in 1 to 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder. I'm using a dark chocolate cocoa powder, but regular cocoa powder works really well too. And then whip till stiff peaks, but not butter. I really didn't like how the Oreo filling looked, and it's not whipping up to the volume I want. I think it's due to the higher milk content, so I'm going to redo the whipping cream, but also redo it with powdered sugar instead, since that's my favorite way to do it. Okay, so round 2. I like it more, but I'm just disappointed. So let's start decorating the cake. I'm using berries from our garden and mint from our yard. I'm going to lift the cake up and tuck these mint leaves underneath. I haven't really a plan for the whipped cream. I think I'm going to put it on the side for when the kids want to eat it, kind of like how they do in the restaurants. It's looking very Christmassy though. What do you think? So let's cut into this. I've told you guys this before, how I'm a vanilla person and only eat chocolate under specific circumstances. I'm going to cut a tiny slice. So each week I make dessert, and the kids have been missing cheesecake for a while now, and they're super excited about this. I love how this is so thin, but also firm. It's still slightly warm, and I'm adding our dark chocolate whipped cream for fun. So this is what we're after. Smooth, creamy, with just the right amount of tang. I love the pop from the berries, and the crust is easy to cut with my fork. I really love the contrast of the textures from the soft cake and the crust. So I'm going to cut some more slices to share, but this is actually best served chilled. It will firm up further as it cools down, so this is the basic gist of it. So here we have it, sheep's cheese but dessert. I love how sheep's cheese gives this such a complex flavor profile, and I hope you can see this. It's such a fun cheesecake to make, and I really hope you enjoy this cake as much as our family does too. If you're inspired to try making your own soft cheeses, or if you just want to see more of the sheepies, their lambs, and the rest of the flock, make sure to subscribe, and if you try this recipe, I'd love to hear how it turns out for you. Until next time, keep creating, keep experimenting, and remember, the best ingredients are often right in your own backyard. If you've made it this far, an extra special thank you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Ta-tas!